All right, we're live. I think we're live. So we are 15 minutes late from the original start time, which is 10:45, but we're 1 minute early from the new start time. So let's think positive and say I'm a minute early. How about that? All right, let's get it going. Let's go. What up, what up, what up, everybody? Sorry, I got the sniffles. I was just coughing my lungs out a second ago. What's up, everybody? Thank you guys for being here. Make sure you hit that like button on the way in. Hit that share button if you're already here. And hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Because we got some news to report, got some big things happening, and we got some confirmation from other sources that, well, most would deem more credible than me, that confirm a lot of what I've been telling you guys in the last few shows. One receipt in particular, and I'm gonna have to search it on YouTube during the show, is pertaining to Charlie Kirk's incident when I was explaining my theory on how Charlie Kirk could have faked his death, and if the Trump administration was involved in helping him, he must have had military assets assisting him in that operation. Well, we have confirmed, and I've let you guys in on this, the Egyptian military was involved with the plane that mysteriously disappeared and showed back up an hour later. And also, I was listening to the interview with Myron Gaines and Candace Owens. And if you guys haven't seen that, you should definitely go watch that. I highly recommend it. You don't even have to watch it. You can listen to it, because I was listening to it while I was working today. And towards the end of the show, I want to say about maybe 55 minutes in, because it hit the hour mark right when Candace got done saying what she was saying. So it might have been like a 5-minute interval where she was speaking, and she was making reference to, they were talking about the shooter, the Tyler Robinson kid, being a patsy, and she made mention of the figure that was filmed on the roof running across the rooftop. And she said she actually was able to make contact with the person who took that video. And it turns out that the person who took that video is U.S. military. And that right there, from that whole interview, it was like an hour plus. From that whole interview, that was the one thing that stood out to me the most, because that's the one thing that I've been saying the most, is that our military is running domestic operations. And in a lot of these operations, and I learned about this when I was studying their election monitoring operation. In a lot of these operations, they're wearing civilian clothes and they're blending in with the people. So that lends more credibility to my theory that the National Guard deployments was cover for special operations units to be deployed and utilized domestically. And of course, Trump can't say anything about it publicly because, well, it's an active, ongoing military operation, and all information pertaining to that operation has to remain classified so they don't compromise the integrity of the operation. Elsine over on Rumble, she says, "What the show's name, please?" You talking about Myron and Candace Owens interview? Just type in Candace Owens Myron Gaines interview, and you'll find it. It's like an hour and some change long, and it's got both of them on the thumbnail. You can't miss it. It's a pretty popular video. They probably got like millions of views by now. They better. Now, tonight's topic, of course, the Trump Epstein psyop continues. Yes, they're continuing with the lie. Elsine, it's on Rumble and it's on YouTube as well. So you can find it on YouTube and Rumble, because Myron has a channel on Rumble. So it might be on Myron's channel on Rumble. Candace is on Rumble too, matter of fact. So they even got their agents on social media spinning the narrative like we're stupid or something, and we haven't figured out yet that, well, the Democrats had power for the last 4 years before Trump came in, and they never released any of this horrific stuff about Trump. So why now? Well, now they have to turn on the smear campaign because Trump has pulled the plug on Israel. And I know he's pulled the plug on Israel because, well, remember I told you guys in the last show that he's no longer supplying Israel with usable military equipment. So he's fulfilling the pre-signed agreements to provide Israel with a certain monetary value worth of military equipment, but he's giving them equipment that they cannot use, that they have no use for. They cannot use it for anything. So the Israelis, in order to get usable weapons, they have to resort to other sources. And well, the Chinese won't supply them. The Russians won't supply them. But the Emirates nations are, including Saudi Arabia. And I told you guys this on the last show, and well, there's your receipt. Italian dock workers block passage of Saudi ship carrying arms to Israel. Who would have thought? You see? So I know what I'm talking about. When I get on here and I say these things to you guys, I know what I'm talking about because I've been following the entire scenario from the beginning. I know who's on what side. Now, the Saudis that are shipping arms to Israel are not loyal to Prince bin Salman. What's happening in Saudi Arabia, what happened in Russia, what's happening in China, and what happened in India is the same thing that happened with our government here once Trump came into office. A large faction of the government turned against the leader because the leader decided that they were going to get rid of the corruption, get rid of the deep state networks that were operating within the government and using the power of government to facilitate their crimes. And so they had to launch smear campaigns and try to destroy the political careers of these world leaders who did not want to continue with the deep state program. They were actually for the people. Putin had to get rid of the deep state in Russia. Xi Jinping is still dealing with the deep state in China. President Modi in India, he got rid of his deep state. Prince bin Salman, all through 2017 and 2018, if you go back in the video archives on YouTube, you'll see tons of videos of Saudi police shooting it out with members of the Saudi royal family. Excuse me. And that's because once Prince bin Salman got the throne, he ran an entire purge of his own family members who were operating with the deep state because he was working side by side with Donald Trump. Now we got a Saudi ship sending arms to Israel and being stopped by Italy. Well, if you look at the political climate in Italy, they also have conservative, patriotic leadership that ain't with the bullshit. So Italy's government is on the same type of time that the Trump administration is on. But they can more openly oppose Israel because Israel does not have control of over half their government, and they do not have the country littered with sleeper cells ready to do harm to the people if the government doesn't capitulate. And all these other countries that came out publicly against Israel while Trump remained kissing Netanyahu's ass, that's the scenario. In America, we're literally held hostage. Remember, it was Israeli Mossad that carried out 9/11. And if you think they won't do something that big again, you have to consider this. All these major cities, all these big commercial buildings and residential buildings, who do you think owns them? The companies that own them are ran by who do you think? So if they wanted to carry out something, they already have access to an entire group of people that they can target. All they have to do is demolish another one of these buildings or two or three, delete everybody inside, say the Muslims did it, and then boom, we got us a whole nother war. And they can keep bombing shit here in the United States, and we'll keep believing it's whoever they tell us it is. That's a dangerous situation. So Trump's got to tread lightly, and I understand. So what he's doing is he's silently pulling the plug on Israel. And ironically enough, while the Italians are blocking Saudi ships taking arms to Israel, you got Benjamin Netanyahu publicly saying that Israel is still at war with Rome and that America is the new Roman Empire. And wouldn't you know, Rome is the capital of Italy. Ancient Rome was located in Italy. Italy is blocking arms shipments to Israel. Italy is allied with the BRICS. Trump is secretly allied with the BRICS. And that's why Netanyahu says America is the new Roman Empire. But he's using the characterization of the Roman Empire to give it a negative spin, to make it sound like, it's all bad and it needs to change and they should be in charge. But we know better. We know better. But he's clearly making the statement that America and Israel are in opposition to one another now. So you got Patriot allies in Italy blocking arms shipments to Israel being sent by the Saudi deep state. You got Netanyahu openly, publicly saying that he's at odds with America, and him and Trump have been at odds for a long time. And what do you know? Trump expected to sign bill forcing release of Justice Department's Epstein files. So when it comes to the Epstein files, it's over 50,000 pages altogether, but it's split into different parts. There's the soft information, which is what they released in the folders when Trump first came into office and they were waving all the folders around. That's just the lightweight stuff. Then there's the indictment files where all the witness statements and everything is alleged, right? That's what the Justice Department has. Excuse me. Then there is the Epstein case files, which are the files from his previous case where he was actually convicted but given a slap on the wrist, and the files from the Trump case after he was indicted, all the statements from him, Ghislaine Maxwell, and everybody else that was involved with them. And I've come to learn that also contained in these Epstein files, where the sections that pertain to his most recent arrest when Trump had him arrested, there's also information in there of U.S. military intelligence being involved in the Epstein case, which actually would support my theory that he did not kill himself in that jail cell. He was actually rendered by the military and taken into their custody. Because remember what Q said, military is the only way. You see how corrupt the law enforcement is. You see how corrupt the FBI is. Even though we got a patriot as the FBI director, there's a large number of agents within the agency that are corrupt. Thousands of them already got let go, but there's still some there. You can't get everybody, and there's always going to be those that slip through the cracks. And that's what Kash Patel is dealing with. And the DOJ files are the indictment files where, again, it's witness statements and everything that's alleged by the federal prosecutors. And the Department of Justice is under a court order to not release these files. So what they have to do is they have to redact victim information and any information pertaining to people that are currently being investigated. Then they have to have it signed off by a judge to say it's okay now to release to the public because all sensitive information is redacted, and then they can release it. But what's happening is these Obama appointed judges are not signing off on the release. So Congress decided to pass legislation, and Trump is going to sign it, which will require DOJ to release the indictment files. And because of this coming release of the Epstein files, the indictment files, let me be clear about that, not the criminal case file. Well, not the post-conviction case files, but the indictment files, what they used to arrest them and put them on trial in the first place, charge them in the first place. These files are about to come out. The establishment is scared, and what's going to be revealed will vindicate Trump. It's going to prove all these rumors, all these stories about Trump being involved with Epstein to be a lie. Everybody who believed the words of a pedophile over actual facts and evidence are going to be made to look stupid. And the very same people that were accusing Trump of being down with Epstein, a lot of them will be revealed to be down with Epstein. And then the lid's going to be blown off everything. And a lot of people are going to be caught up in some deep, deep shit. I believe there's going to be more. There's going to be public mass arrests. There's going to be probably public executions. Who knows? But shit's going to get lit. That's just my thought. Maybe it won't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I believe shit's going to get lit. Now, here's the other part of it, right? The withholding of the Epstein files. It's partly because the agents within the FBI, you see, what Trump is doing is he's using the enemy's actions to help forward his agenda. I'll give you an example, and then I'll explain to you the FBI, the corrupt FBI agents in the Epstein files, and why Trump is playing it the way he's playing it. Trump is an expert at turning his enemies against each other. You see, he helped popularize Mamdani by, speaking negatively and denouncing him while he was running for mayor of New York, right? Now, he did the opposite of endorse Mamdani, but because there's this huge anti-Israel, anti-Zionist sentiment happening across the country because, well, everybody kind of is able to see how evil Israel really is. Trump knew that Mamdani would get in. He doesn't like the guy. He doesn't support the guy. Mamdani is a complete nut job, but he is the perfect Manchurian candidate to use to cut off the New York City money supply to the Zionist regime because they have a lot of city contracts. They get a lot of city grant money. They get free use of city property and so on. And Mamdani allegedly is planning on, because he's a radical leftist Muslim, he's planning on cutting off, and he's one of those free Palestine leftists. He's going to cut off those contracts, cut off those grants, force them to vacate those city properties that they're able to use for free and whatnot. And it will cut off a large chunk of their money supply. So Mamdani does not agree with Trump politically. Trump does not endorse or support Mamdani, but he knew that the people of New York would vote for Mamdani because the majority sentiment is free Palestine. Mamdani gets in, and now Mamdani is going to cut off the Zionists. So Trump's pulling the plug on Israel, but he's using his own enemies to do it. Now, when it comes to the Epstein files thing, here's how that plays out. The FBI agents that are corrupt and are protecting the pedophiles on the Epstein list, they just so happen to be the ones that are tasked with doing the redactions on the 50,000 pages. It's not something one person can do. So it'll take several people over a certain period of time to do all of those redactions. Trump knows that these guys are going to drag their feet and not let the files be released because they won't be properly redacted. Trump knows this. So as that's happening, he's playing it up as if he's withholding the Epstein files and he's not releasing the Epstein files in order to make the people who are being investigated based on the Epstein files comfortable. Making them comfortable so they will be more vulnerable to apprehension. Also, they're conducting active operations based on the information in the files. So all that information has to remain classified, because if too many names get said, the people who are being investigated, they'll know that they're in the files and they'll run scared. So that's got to be kept secret. So he's using the fact that these corrupt FBI agents are withholding the files. He's kind of falling on that sword, but it's facilitating the operations behind the scenes. So he's making himself look bad. He's kind of sacrificing his own reputation in a way to ensure the integrity of the mission. Now, another effect that move is having is it's driving a wedge between Republicans and the conservative party. And there's a lot of conservatives that are displeased with Trump about, not releasing the files, quote unquote, but they're not attacking the man and they're not accusing him of being in the files, right? Because it's one thing to be mad at him for not releasing the files, but it's a whole nother thing to, decide he's not releasing the files because he's in them and he's doing shit in them. That's, that, like I said, we went over all the reasons why that would literally make no sense. Because if that were the case, why the fuck would he arrest Epstein in the first damn place and bring all this shit to the public's attention? Why would he do that? No other president that has done that, and they were involved with Epstein, and that would make perfect sense. So in driving this wedge between the conservatives, the ones who are really coming out and more aggressively attacking Trump, he's kind of weeding them out of his circle. Remember, Trump is a guy that's big on loyalty. He's all about loyalty. And he's a bit of an egomaniac too. So he's one of those guys that you follow my lead or you're out. So it's either you're in or you're out. There's no straddling the fence. And this is how the beef with him and Marjorie Taylor Greene got sparked. But I believe that move to weed out the Republicans that are more aggressively attacking him and more publicly attacking him and more often attacking him, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I believe that's a move to weed out the infiltrators, because we looked at Marjorie Taylor Greene's net worth when she got into office and where it is now, and it's indicative of a deep state operative. It's the same pattern. You come in worth less than $1 million. 4 years later, you're worth 20 times, you're worth 25 million. There's no investment vehicle in the world that would net you those types of gains in a 4-year period. Not one. I don't give a fuck what you do. You could flip you could flip the Empire State Building. You still ain't gonna make $25 million in 1 year. In 4 years. At least I don't believe it. Maybe I'm wrong. But what we do know is Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't flip no fucking skyscrapers. We know that. So I think he's weeding out infiltrators by making this move, because that's what I see happening. And he did the same thing with the red flag laws when he said, take the guns now, due process later. And he exposed, what's his name? Dan Crenshaw down in Texas, the guy with the eye patch. Because Dan Crenshaw was all for it. He wanted to ban guns in Texas. He wanted the red flag laws in Texas. And then Trump walked it back, and all the other conservatives kind of breathed a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, Dan Crenshaw was still pushing for red flag laws. He exposed them, got him to expose himself, really. And then the next election cycle, he got voted out, and that was the end of him. And I believe when Trump said, and had Kash Patel say that there's no Epstein files or whatever it was that they said that pissed everybody off, it was to gauge the reactions. And what happened? All the pro-Israel never Trumpers started kissing Trump's ass again, essentially getting them to expose themselves. Because anybody in a position of power who would be happy at the fact that Trump is withholding information from the American people Well, that would seem to suggest that there's some dirt contained in that information on those people as well, and they're happy that Trump is protecting them and covering up their dirt. So they're exposing themselves. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this Epstein Files thing is going to drag on well into next summer, because that's the summer right before the midterms. And right before the midterm elections come, that's when the files are all going to be released. That's when all the names are going to be dropped. And every single Democrat in Congress that's involved with Jeffrey Epstein will have no chance of reelection, and it will spell the end of the Democratic Party. I believe that's what the play is going to be. So Trump's going to continue to fall on the sword and play the Epstein Files game until it's time to push the detonator. But it could happen sooner. But I don't think he wants to do it too early, because if he does it too early, excuse me, the media and the political establishment will have had the opportunity to stage so many different events to clog the news cycle that everybody's going to forget about the names on the Epstein list. And then by the time the midterm election comes around, it's not an issue anymore. So I think he's going to hold off until the midterms, and then it's going to become an issue within the midterm elections. That's what I think. Because if I were Trump, that's what I would do. I would use it as political capital, because both Trump haters and Trump supporters alike are looking at the Epstein files. When you say the name Epstein, that name rings bells on the left and the right and every other corner in between. So that is one issue that will definitely bring the majority of the American people over to the conservative side, because what they will learn from the Epstein files is that real, true pro-American conservatives like Donald Trump don't engage in pedophilia. We're against pedophilia. We're the normal people that want to protect the children. And all that liberal propaganda and leftist communist bullshit you've been taught to believe, you're going to realize it was just a psyop. Because when you look at the political left and the media reporting, literally everything they do is a psyop. This whole Donald Trump's connected to Epstein thing, it's a psyop. It's almost like communism, socialism, leftism, liberalism. Those are modern liberalism, I should say. It's not classical liberalism. Those ideologies, or what we call ideologies, I don't even think they're real ideologies. I believe that they are just cold, hard psyops dressed up as political ideologies. So people who are politically involved and politically active would actually use their political power to throw their support behind these psyops and be misled into self-destruction. Because think about it. Conservatism, we can say it's a real ideology, because even people out there who are not conservatives or not political at all, most of them believe in pro-life. Most of them do not want men pretending to be women going into the women's bathroom. Most of them do not want boys pretending to be girls going to the girls' bathrooms at their kids' schools. Most of them believe in family. Most of them believe in a nuclear family, whether they believe in legal marriage or not. They believe in a father and mother in the household raising the kids together, because most people, the majority of people in America, are just normal people. And these, what we call normal lifestyles, are based in conservatism. And these are things that people just naturally gravitate towards, And that's why we call them conservative principles, because we're conserving the natural order. There's a lot of people out there that live conservative lifestyles, but they vote liberal. How is this possible? How is it possible to live a conservative lifestyle and not know you're a conservative? Well, it takes a psyop to do that, doesn't it? They have to make you believe something to get you to ignore what the reality is. So you live a conservative lifestyle, but you believe the liberal propaganda. So I can't even call that a real ideology, because it's something that you have to be like deceived into. And that's the hallmark of a psyop. It's based in deception. And everything communist, socialist that the Democrats push, it's all lies dressed up to look like it's beneficial. Everything the Democrats say they want to do for the people that they claim is going to help the people ends up hurting the people. So every time they get the people to believe in their agenda and believe in their plan and believe in their policies and vote them into office, the people get screwed over. Is that not a psyop? That's not a real ideology. Because a real ideology is based in something factual and realistic. And a psyop is based in something fantastical and unrealistic. This is why they have to use censorship and keep their voters ignorant. This is why they have to bombard them in the news cycle with celebrity gossip and other types of bullshit. So they don't do real research and become knowledgeable. They have to be kept ignorant so they can be deceived, so the psyop can work. In communism, the lie is good people are going to take over. Good, generous, honest people are going to take over everything, control all the resources, and they'll be responsible for evenly distributing the resources amongst the people. That's a lie. Because good people don't get into those positions. It's always bad people. And even if it starts out with good people, the bad people will see the opportunity to control everything from that position, and they'll find their way into that position, and they'll have control over all the resources. And guess what won't happen? The equal, even distribution of those resources. And this is why in every communist country on earth, the political leadership, they live like royalty. The general population, they live like paupers. This is how that happens, because it's all based on a lie. Socialism. Oh, the government is going to give you everything free and pay for everything for you. Doesn't work like that, because somebody's got to foot that bill at the end of the day. So it's a math equation that ain't mathing. So it never works. But they sell it to the people, to ignorant people, as if it's a good thing, as if it will work. Like, think about the Democrats' tax the rich policy. That's a prime example of that. Tax the rich is a fucking psyop, because they make the people believe that we, the government, are going to raise taxes on just the rich people because we can discriminate like that. Then we're going to take all that money we steal from the rich people and we'll give it to you, poor people, so you can be rich too. That's the lie. Because that money never makes it to the poor people. They raise the taxes on the rich people, and the rich people leave. The rich people sell their assets and they leave. They liquidate their assets and they leave. Thus, those high tax rates don't get paid. So it sounds good on paper, but when implemented in reality, it doesn't work. And the Democrats know this, but they also know that their voters are ignorant of this. So they can sell them the lie and get them with the psyop. Liberalism is a psyop. When somebody that's pro-communism has to sit there and describe corporatism to you and then lie to you and tell you it's capitalism, they're running a psyop. That is a psyop. Because I'm sure everybody here in this chat works a job, earns money somehow, and buys things that they want and need. That's capitalism. Nothing more. That is capitalism. Anything beyond free market buying and selling, supply and demand, anything beyond that that involves any element of market manipulation or control, that's no longer capitalism. That is corporatism. A completely different system. It's easily disguised as capitalism. So the communists use that disguise to make you think a more controlled system would be better, which is the stupidest shit. It's like, oh, your house needs to be repainted. Let's burn it down. That's pretty much what communism is. So the problems you might have with capitalism or corporatism would be, the faded paint on your walls in your house. To implement communism as a solution would be the equivalent of burning that house down to fix the faded paint on the wall. You see, corporatism does make the rich richer and it makes the poor poorer because it's controlled by the rich. Capitalism is controlled by the supply that producers are able to produce and the demand that the buyers are able to buy. It's controlled solely by the market. That's capitalism. I forgot where I was going with that. Hold on, let me see if I can refresh my memory. It's controlled by and it makes the poor poorer. Okay. So corporatism makes the rich richer, makes the poor poorer. Capitalism makes the poor rich and can also make the rich poor. It's a fair exchange. Communism, on the other hand, it doesn't make the rich richer and the poor poorer. What it does is it keeps the richest rich and it makes everybody else equally poor, including other rich people. So it keeps the poor poor and it makes the rich poor. That's what communism does. Not a viable solution at all. It's just like, again, the tax the rich policy. The people they consider rich are people who earn, $250K or more. That's the benchmark. That would be your property owners, because most houses in the United States are worth more than $250,000. So if you own one rental property and you're barely making an extra $400 or $500 a month off the profits from the rent, you're now considered rich and your taxes go up because you own an asset that's worth more than $250,000. Thus, you have a net worth greater than $250,000. Thus, you're considered rich people, and now you get the high ass taxes. That's how it works. And what the people who vote for those policies don't realize, because I'm sure the politicians know this, they don't realize that the rich people would be your landlords. The rich people would be your business owners, the job creators, as they would call it, the employers. And when you raise their taxes and they have to give more money to the government, that is an increase in their operating costs. So if they have an increase in their operating costs, they have to increase their revenue stream. So that landlord's taxes go up, he's going to raise your rent. You now pay those taxes just like you've been paying the mortgage. So you voted for the tax the rich politician, and all it ended up doing is causing your rent to go up. So you voted for tax the rich, hoping that the politicians would steal the money from the rich people and give it to you, and you end up essentially voting for your rent to go up. It's a psyop. That's how a psyop works. Not only that, but when these business owners shut down their operations and they move to more tax-friendly states, guess what happens? All the people that were working for that company, they're now out of a job. And if 10, 20 companies leave, that could be potentially tens of thousands of people out of jobs, depending on what company it is. And then what happens is the new investor money that so many cities depend on isn't going to come to that city because the city now is rendered uninvestable, because the cost to operate an investment in property in that state is so high that the profit margins are too low. So you might go to New York City to invest $1 million in purchasing a rental property, but your taxes are so fucking high. The cost of the property is so high that your mortgage payment is so high. And now you got a 2-unit, I guess, townhouse with 2 tenants paying rent on time, but you're still barely making $300 a month after you pay them high ass fucking taxes and that high ass mortgage. When you could take that $1 million, go to somewhere like Indiana or some shit, or Michigan. I heard Michigan is having an economic real estate boom right now, in Detroit in particular. You take your $1 million, you go to Detroit, you could probably buy 10 rental houses with that money. Now, instead of making $300 a month off your $1 million investment in New York, you're making $3,000 a month off your $1 million investment in a different city where properties are cheaper, property taxes are lower, and the profit margins are much greater. So why would you bring your money to New York City? So the bad tax policy in New York City is not only driving out the existing money, but it's repelling the influx of new money. And all that's doing is creating more poverty, less opportunity. Now you're going to have more crime, more desperation, more dependence on government assistance. It's all a psyop. This is how psyops work. So when you see these politicians lying to you about policies that they want to implement that are going to benefit you but end up hurting you, you're not following a political ideology at that point. You're being brainwashed by a psyop. That's what's happening. Shout out to Lies That Bind with the Rumble rant. Lies says, "Hi, Citizen Man. Always a pleasure hearing your insight. You have a way of making it make sense. Thanks." Appreciate that, Lies That Bind. And shout out to my brother Lee14224 on the PayPal and my sister Elsine on the Venmo. I forgot to shout you guys out. I'm over here going the fuck off. Yeah. So a lot of this crap that people around us, our parents, our friends, our family members believe, it's not even a real ideology. It's a psyop. They're believing in a psyop. It's just like a lot of these false religions. People think they're actually believing in a religion when all they're doing is following a psyop. Like, how about Jim Jones in Jonestown? That was supposed to be some spiritual religion of freedom from government and all this stupid shit. And he ended up being worse than the damn government. Because at least the government will come kill you themselves. They ain't going to make you drink Kool-Aid to kill yourself. Motor Matt, what's up, brother? Salutes to you. Salutes to Barnes, Trey Finesse, DC Legendary, American Savage, Kevin Green. What's going on, brother? Damn, those are only people in the chat. We got 52 people watching. How many likes we got? 24. Come on, guys. 24 likes, really? Get them likes up, man. Hit that like button. Get the likes up. There you go. And my Rumble people, I need y'all to do the same thing. Get them likes up. We got 19 watching on Rumble and 5 likes. How, Sway? So, interesting show for you guys tonight. And we are going to get into it. So let's do it. Make sure you guys go subscribe to the Citizen Man Backup channel. If you haven't subscribed to the Backup channel on YouTube, please make sure you do. The link is in the description box. Excuse me. Of every video on YouTube and Rumble. And I'm going to keep that channel active, or at least I'm going to keep it in the wings in case something happens to this channel. We can stream over there so you guys can stay connected. So make sure you subscribe to the Backup channel. Also, follow me on Rumble, which is my new main channel, and that's where the bulk of my political content is. So if you want to get more of Citizen Man's political content, get over to Rumble. It's what I have on YouTube is very limited due to the censorship, and I have a lot of all of my flat Earth content on YouTube. So if you're into that, you can catch that right here on YouTube. But if you want the real hardcore political information, the geopolitics, the war stuff, the legislative stuff, whatever, get over to Rumble. It's all on Rumble, and I cover a vast array of topics. It ain't just the same old shit every day. Believe that. And thank you, Motor Matt, for dropping that comment in the chat. He says, support Citizen Man. So it just so happens to come at the right time. If you guys would like to support the show by sending in a kind donation, you could do so via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo by using the tags scrolling across the screen in the banner below. The links that are pinned to the YouTube the links that are pinned to the top of the YouTube chat in the black box where it says Citizen Man TV in yellow. Just click the yellow, the box opens up, and all the links are there. And you can also find those very same links in the description box of every video on YouTube and Rumble. And I want to give a big shout out to my sister Elsine on the Venmo. She says, missed a couple of your lives, not getting reminders, but the replays are excellent as ever. Smooth 7. And my good brother Lee 14224 on the PayPal. Let me see what brother Lee had to say. Support for the Wednesday show and daytime. Oh, so you hit me for both shows. Appreciate that, brother. Thank you for that support. And anybody else that would like to support the show, feel free to do so as we move along. So let's move it along. So let's find that first slide. I hate that they're never in order. I'm still trying to figure out how to fix that. But it's a Chromebook, so I'm limited. Now, while the world is on fire, Mexico is damn near burning to the ground. Trump's bombing the shit out of the Caribbean Sea. You got the whole Epstein thing going on over here. We just had the government shut down. We got all this wild shit going on in the world. Israel's gone fucking berserk. Hang on a second. Let me fix something really quick. Share screen. Screenshot. All right. All right. We looking good? All right. We looking good. Cool. All right. So while the world burns, Russia decides to go pirate hunting. Yes, that's right. Pirate hunting. Wealthy Russian people are hiring luxury yachts, which are heavily armed, to sail near Somalia on pirate hunting expeditions. Their goal is to hopefully attract pirates to approach them so that they can open fire with grenade launchers and automatic weapons. This is the closest thing to the purge currently available. E Nice, what up? This is funny. I think it's funny because pirates they're robbers. They're the highway robbers of the sea. And I hate thieves and I hate robbers. So they get what they deserve. And if other governments in that area decided to do what these wealthy Russian people were doing, there would be no pirate problem. If the Second Amendment and gun rights was universally accepted around the world as something common for men to carry weapons, we wouldn't have this pirate problem because every ship's crew would be armed. There would have been no Captain Phillips situation. So I think this is a good thing because what it does is it creates a chilling effect where the pirates now are getting shot up and bombed by luxury yachts and all types of different boats. So now they'll be more hesitant to approach any ship because, well, they run the risk of getting fucked up. And I think that's great. I think they should keep it up. Shout out to my man Motor Wolf with the $5 challenge on the Cash App. So, guys, we got 3 supporters on the board. Shout out to all 3. We need 2 more to get to 5 and 7 more to get to 10. And Motor Matt just dropped the $5 challenge. So anybody that wants to take him up on that challenge, feel free. You know where the links are. Let's jump to slide number 2. I hate having to do this shit. So, I told you guys, Trump is no longer sending usable weapons to Israel. We discussed this in the beginning of the show. There's your receipt. Israel is now depending on other sources for their weapons, and the Saudis, the Saudi deep state, their arms dealers, are selling weapons to Israel, and the Italians are now blocking a Saudi ship carrying arms to Israel. And the Italians are not with the games. They're not with the deep state agenda. They're not with the New World Order. They're with the BRICS. They're switching to a gold-backed currency, and they are entering the quantum financial system. Italy has a patriot as the president, and Italy is not fucking around. And I told you Israel was getting their guns from the Saudis and the Emirates. I said the Emirates. I'm not even sure if the Emirates include the Saudis, but here you have proof. You can look up this. This is a real headline. You can look it up. I just happened to find a meme on Instagram, and I thought it was more, show friendly for the slideshow because the headline's written in big bold letters. But this is proof that what I told you on the last show about Israel getting their weapons from the Middle East or from the Emirates, well, there's some truth to that. There's some truth to that. Lies That Bind says, okay, that's weird. Why can't they approach the pirates? You mean, why can't the pirates approach them? I'm not sure what you're asking, Lies That Bind. Well, here's the thing, right? When you're out at sea and there's a strange boat approaching you and you're in waters that are known for piracy, you have to assume they're pirates because if they get too close to you and they draw down on you and they get the drop on you, it's over. You can't do shit. They'll shoot your boat up. They'll sink your boat. So you got to get the drop on them first. Like, I wouldn't go out into international waters unarmed. That's insane. I would never. I wouldn't. No, if no guns allowed on the ship, I'm not getting on that fucking ship. But anyway, Colombia has just appointed its new vice minister for women, and it's a man. His background, a specialist in feminist and gender studies. So this liberalism, again, it's the poison that has infected our society. And it's infected the entire world. And what we see happening around the world is some countries are going the Trump way and other countries are going the Obama way. And Colombia apparently is one of those countries that's gone the Democrat the liberal Democrat way. Now, did you know Canada and the UK, because the EU went the liberal Democrat, the Obama way too. And in the UK and in Canada, did you know that Child Protective Services can actually take your kids away with the force of the police if you refuse to vaccinate your children? They can do that. And these places became that way because their populations were systematically dumbed down, made to be docile, poisoned so they would lose their will to fight back. And then they started voting for politicians that seemed harmless and wanted to, bring the world together and sing Kumbaya. And it turned out that these politicians were socialists and communists. And so they started implementing tyranny once they were given power. And now the people of those nations are regretting their political decision, but they don't know what to do about it because they haven't figured out that liberalism is a psyop. And in these countries, they're claiming to support women and women's rights, but they're allowing grown men to pretend to be women and take the jobs of women, take the positions of women. And these men are particularly dangerous. They're dangerous because they're weak. That's what makes them dangerous. For example, in the streets, the little small scrawny guy is more feared than the big tall muscle guy. You know why? Because that big tall muscle guy could probably whoop your ass. Most certainly can whoop your ass. But he knows better than to go fucking with that little small scrawny guy, because that little small scrawny guy got a big 45 tucked on his hip that will blow his big ass away. Well, banish him to the shadow realm, as some would say. So just because they're weak does not mean they're not dangerous. And these weak men that pretend to be women are particularly dangerous because not only are they obviously mentally ill, they are perverted, and they are being offered a level of power that makes them a threat to our society. When you have public businesses that are open to the public, that allows men into women and girls' spaces, that sets the stage for all types of sexual crimes to occur, and it has been occurring. In Loudoun County Public Schools in Virginia, the boy in a skirt allowed to go into the girls' restroom and ended up raping a 13-year-old girl. Did they lock his ass up? No. They sent him to another school. 3 weeks later, he did the same thing to another girl. These people are dangerous. Then his mother went to the school board meeting and defended him and blamed the victims. And if you see his mother, she's one of these sexual deviant pervert rainbow perverts too. But they're being given power. And these weak men are seeking power because with political power, they can use the force, the physical force of stronger men, which would be the enforcement wings of government, to enact their will. And that's what makes them dangerous. This is fucking disgusting. And the Colombian people should be ashamed of themselves. And every woman, every Colombian woman should be disgusted and offended by this. And whatever political party put this man up there, this disgusting looking motherfucker up there, whatever political party does that, the women should never vote for them ever again. Ever. Because this is some sick shit. Remember, Biden did the same thing, right? With Rachel Levine as the what was it? NHS or HHS director, like the top medical professional in the country. A whole man pretending to be a woman. But this they call equality. This is what they call equality. What they call equality is men being able to pretend to be women and take the place of women. It's actually defiling the divine feminine is what it's doing. It's defiling the divine feminine by replacing it with the masculine, and it's a desecration of the masculine because it's being portrayed as feminine. This is not equality. This is sickness. That's what this is. This is perversion. Perversion of sexuality, perversion of reality. Because these same men would want to make laws and demand under threat of punishment. And there are places in Canada and people in California have been arrested by police and taken to jail for quote unquote misgendering by calling a man a man. This man shouldn't be anywhere near a government office. This is fucking disgusting. And every woman in Colombia should be disgusted by this. All the women that work in that office should quit their jobs or go on strike. The vice minister for women is a whole man. It's like they run around saying women's rights, equality, and then they turn around and slap some trannies sausage in women's faces and say, here, this is a woman too. Women, when are y'all going to stop accepting this shit? When are y'all going to stop accepting this? Because it was the liberal women that were running around saying trans women are women. It was the liberal women that were running around screaming for women's rights and trans rights. And now it's those very same liberal women that are being adversely affected by these perverts, these male perverts, going into their bathrooms, going into their saunas and their private private female spaces. It's almost like they advocated for their own self-destruction. Wonder what that sounds like. A psyop. A psyop. Yeah, y'all. I was born in South America. I grew up in the States, but I was born in South America. And this probably for you, any of you quote unquote FBAs out there, this is probably not an FBA hairline, I would presume. I don't know. But speaking of FBA, you guys saw my breakdown of Tariq Nasheed with the murder case. You saw my breakdown of his definition of FBA on his website. It defines FBAs as having African ancestry, which I thought was weird since he runs around calling Africans tethers. But I think Tariq Nasheed is gay. I think he's super gay. And he has very zesty mannerisms. And there is this character that shows up on his podcasts when he does panels and stuff. And he calls it's a man named Gerald, but he pretends to be a woman and he calls himself Giselle. Now, what's so weird about this Giselle situation is Giselle seems to have a very friendly relationship with Tariq Nasheed. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Because people are people. People are going to do what they want to do. You can't really judge them, for doing what they want to do in terms of if they want to have a conversation with you. Like even that crazy Colombian man, if he wanted to have a conversation, I'd have a conversation with him because, boy, I got questions, right? But the weird thing about the Tariq Nasheed, the FBA thing is, Tariq Nasheed dubbed that Gerald, a.k.a. Giselle fella, as the first lady of FBA. Take notes, my FBA folks. Take notes. I'm educating you here. The founder of the FBA, the creator of the FBA categorization, because that's what it is. He declared a transgender as the first lady of FBA. Sounds to me like he's playing those liberal gay games too. Because the last time I checked, this man had a wife. And if he is the creator and the founder of FBA and the holder of the copyright to FBA and the owner and creator of the official FBA website, well, wouldn't his wife, his half-Jewish wife, be then the first lady of FBA? That's like the pastor of a church being married to his wife and inviting a transgender into the church and saying this is the first lady of the church. Like, you're fucking that transgender. There's no reason why you would even say that. Thank you, DC Legendary. He says you're cut crispy. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. I cut it myself. I've been cutting my own hair since 2020. I used to have a barber, and then my barber decided that I have to wear a mask when I walk into the barber shop. But then when I sit in the barber chair to get a haircut, I can take the mask off, which literally makes no fucking sense at all. And I was like, you know what, bro? I thought you knew better, but if you're gonna play these games, I can't give you my money. So I started cutting it myself. Yeah, DC Legendary. I tend to agree with the Aboriginal Indigenous American. In fact, I would even drop the Aboriginal and I would just say Indigenous American because those were the people that were here before. And did you know that part of the reason why the American Indians were reclassified after slavery? Get this. They were reclassified as a different group, which was colored, or I think it was Negro, then colored, then it turned to black, which is where we are today. Well, get this. When Black Americans were enslaved here in America by other Black Americans as well as white Americans, but it was 2% of the entire population that owned slaves. They knew their identity, and their identity was Native Indian. They were Indians. And after slavery, the Indians were reclassified, and here we are today. The Indians are now the black people. And that was done in an effort to escape responsibility for slavery. Because for a very short time in the late 1800s, early 1900s, descendants of these slave owner families would make the claim that, hey, my family never enslaved the colored people. All my grandfather's slaves were Indians. You see? So you reclassify the Indians as something different. The future generations of Indians that were now reclassified as colored, they don't make the connection to Indian. So when the discussion or the debate about reparations for slavery comes up, the slave masters or the descendants of the slave masters can then say, hey, we're not on the hook for enslaving you because my family never enslaved colored people. My family enslaved Indians. Diabolical. Now, of course, the plan didn't work because too many colored people or black people knew their family history, and they knew who what tribes they belonged to. So that reclassification, in order to cover up the disgusting history of slavery, it actually failed. But what it was effective in doing was robbing Black Americans of their true identity, their true heritage, their true lineage, and their true history. And now we have all these different costume wearing clowns coming up with all these different identities for Black people. You got your back to Africa, red, black, and green motherfuckers, and then you got the the feather wearing Indians, which I believe are actually closer to the truth than the back to Africa motherfuckers. And then you got the motherfuckers that believe Black people were space aliens and all this dumb shit. All because Black Americans have become a group of people that don't know who they are anymore. There's no other race in this country that has spiritual gurus teaching them false histories about their origins. They all know their origins because they were never enslaved to the degree of Black people and reclassified as many times as Black people have. And I think people like Tariq Nasheed are actually doing indigenous Black Americans, a serious disservice by coming up with another classification category for Black people, because that doesn't solve anything. All that does is creates more confusion. And I believe that's what his intention is: create more division and more confusion. Because the minute Black Americans start recognizing themselves as the indigenous American Indians, guess what? They're now instantly distinguishable from every other group of Black-skinned people in this country that came from another country, like the Black Caribbean folks and the Black Africans, because now the Black Americans will have essentially abandoned the title Black, which allows all these so-called tethers and foreigners to fall under that same category and put themselves in the same playing field as Black Americans and take advantage of the same opportunities that were strictly set forward for Black Americans. that takes away that opportunity for them to do that, because now y'all not black. We not black. We Indians. So all you tether motherfuckers over here calling yourself black, you can call yourself black all the fuck you want. That ain't us. You see? Now that would be the argument at that point. So instead of going along with the reclassifications and just accepting the next new one that comes out, because who's to say 20 years from now, some other motherfucker ain't, some other leg crossing, lip smacking, Mac tranny chasing motherfucker gonna come out and come up with a whole new label, create a website with a fake ass definition and sell it to black folks again. And then it's going to be another reclassification, which moves you farther away from the original identity. And what's even more important to note is the federal government has made several concessions legislatively to particular Indian tribes. And there's a lot of black people who have lineage that goes back to these Indian tribes. So if black Americans all woke up one day and realized, hey, my ancestors came from this tribe and that tribe and this tribe, guess what? The concessions that the federal government has made to those tribes, you're now entitled to. Like, for example, the grants that they offer, the free college tuition that they offer, the startup business loans that are forgivable, the land allotments. But you see, the $5 Indians are getting it because they held on to their Indian identity, which was fake. And so they were able to take advantage of the concessions. Meanwhile, the real Indians, who those concessions were supposed to be designated for, lost out because they running around calling themselves Negroes and black. See? So you think calling yourself FBA is going to fix that? No, it's going to make it worse. Andrew says reservations should be terminated. They have done more harm than good. Yeah, it's the people that are running those reservations, the $5 Indians that control those reservations, that are fucking them up. And the funny thing is, the reservations, like the Indian Removal Act with the federal government in, what was it, 1790, or was it like 1820? I think it was the early 1800s. It was like 20 or 30 years after the Revolutionary War. I did a whole stream talking about the Indian Removal Act. And in that stream, I broke down the history of the American Indian tribes and their involvement in the Revolutionary War of 1776. This was the black people at that time. They weren't all slaves, right? But there were some Indian tribes that sided with the Americans and some tribes that sided with the British. And the tribes that sided with the British, they did so because they were afraid that if they joined the rebellion against the greatest empire in the world, they would be defeated. So they thought they were joining the winning team. So they decided to help fight on the side of the redcoats. So while the white people were warring, the white Americans were warring with the white British, you had black Indian tribes on the side of Americans warring against other black Indian tribes, warring on the side of the British. And after the war was over and the British were repelled, and the government was being created and established, by the time Congress was fully established and had been in the process of enacting legislation for the last several years, for the previous several years, they then enacted the Indian Removal Act. And the Indian Removal Act was targeted at the tribes who specifically sided with the British. That's why we had the Trail of Tears, and that's why all that Indian land was seized. That's why it was done. It was done because these tribes, it was vengeance against the tribes. It wasn't just because the white people hated the Indians, because other Indian tribes assisted the government in the Indian Removal Act. So now you got to look a little deeper than just, was it a racial thing? It was about the Revolutionary War, and it was the tribes that sided with the British who were targeted by the Indian Removal Act because under the Constitution, they were viewed as domestic enemies because they had sided with a foreign invader. Right, DC Legendary. They call themselves foundational Black Americans, but then they don't want to be called Black Americans. It's the dumbest shit. I mean, this is coming from a guy that said a trans gentleman is the first lady of FBA. So go figure, right? It's just meant to be confusing. Tariq Nasheed is an agent of chaos. And he got all this shit to say about the white man. But you know what white man he won't talk about? The one with the small hat. That's the one he's afraid to even touch. That's the third rail. So when you have a psyop being portrayed as a political ideology in your country, and too many people buy into it, you get political leadership that uses the force of government against the people. During COVID, the vaccine was known by many medical professionals to be a biological weapon or something harmful that hadn't been properly tested. But doctors were incentivized to give people the COVID shot anyway, so they did it. But some doctors, they were able to cash in on the money from the COVID shots, but not poison and kill off their patients at the same time by injecting them with saline solution. The doctor who faced 35 years in prison for giving saline instead of the COVID vaccine has now been fully acquitted. Yes, they were trying to give this man 35 years in prison because he refused to give his patients the COVID bioweapon, and he injected them with saline solution instead. 35 years in prison they try to give this man. So let me get this straight. The doctor that refused to poison his patients to death gets put on trial facing 35 years. But the motherfuckers that made the poison and are pushing it on these doctors, that we don't touch a hair on their heads. No, we don't. They get to walk free. That's like me selling cyanide pills and saying, hey, get these cyanide pills and kill your spouse and get that insurance money. Get these cyanide pills. And I'm literally supplying cyanide pills for the purpose of committing murder. Somebody buys my pill and then goes and commits murder with it. I am liable too because I supplied the motherfucking murder weapon. Like, what the fuck? But this is what you get. And in places like Canada and the UK, doctors actually were jailed for doing that. So here's the next psyop to come. Now that it's out that the FBI staged January 6th, and it's now without a shadow of a doubt that 275 FBI agents were present on January 6th. Then we had the Antifa and Black Lives Matter infiltration on January 6th. Now they're trying to roll out the next psyop. Unsealed documents show Donald Trump paid $3 million to help fund January 6th. Again, wasn't there a whole January 6th committee created in Congress right after Biden got inaugurated, after the fake inauguration? Didn't that happen? I seem to recall that happening. And didn't they investigate everybody and have all these innocent people locked up without trial, without due process and shit for what they claimed was an insurrection, but people got stupid ass charges like destruction of property or breaking and entering or some stupid shit like that? It was just all dumb shit. Where was the reports of these documents proving that Donald Trump funded January 6th? Because I remember them pushing that narrative real hard. It got so bad, get this, it got so bad that YouTube changed their censorship policy to censor anything related to Q. They said Q was promoting violence because January 6th, they claim, was orchestrated by Q. And they started censoring anybody posting Q posts, including myself, of course. Now, all of a sudden, Donald Trump paid $3 million to fund January 6th. Well, I'll tell you this. I was there on January 6th, and the only people getting funded on January 6th was Antifa, Black Lives Matter, the FBI, and the Capitol Police. Because I went there partly on my own dime, but mostly from the donations that I was getting from my supporters, because once I announced that I was going to DC for January 6th, donations increased because my viewers wanted to see what was going on in DC. And I was able to do a couple of videos and a couple of streams, but there was so many people there and so many streams going that the internet just pretty much shut down. It conked out. It just wasn't working, at least not on YouTube. But I got smart and I remembered, hey, this January 6th political thing, this is white people shit. Instagram is black people shit. And I guarantee you, with all these white people here, YouTube and all the other streaming platforms are going to be bogged down with all the signals going out, but Instagram won't be. So guess what? I got on Instagram and I was able to go live with no problem. Some quick thinking. That's what that was. That was before the tear gas hit me. But I was there on January 6th. And everybody that was there on their own dime from the looks of things, of course, except for the people who were orchestrating the riot. So for them to sit here and say Donald Trump funded January 6th now, we have to ask the same question that we ask about their claims that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. Why the fuck didn't you say this sooner? Why'd you tell all those lies first? And now you want to give us this and make us believe this is true after you done told all those other fucking lies. Now we're supposed to believe you? Really? Really? But I think this is going to be the next psyop because I believe they see the writing on the wall. They know that the Trump-Epstein narrative is quickly losing steam. It's not just losing steam, it's rapidly losing steam. And they got to come up with something else real quick. So what's the next best thing? Well, we made a big deal out of January 6th and we got a bunch of people to believe January 6th was worse than 9/11. So let's say Trump funded it. It'll be the same as if we said Trump funded 9/11. It'll be the same amount of outrage. So let's play that card. And here they are playing that card. And guess what's going to happen? It ain't going to work. Every single thing they pull out about Trump now is 100,000% a fucking lie. Because from 2017 to 2019, the Democrats had Robert Mueller appointed as a special prosecutor by the Justice Department to investigate. They had Robert Mueller investigate Donald Trump for 2 years straight. And at the end of it all, Mueller came back and said he found nothing. And this was a Department of Justice investigation. Came back and said there's nothing. They tried to impeach Trump, not once, but twice. Both times, they had nothing. They used motherfuckers to lie on him, to sue him, to try to get money out of him. Cases got thrown out. They used motherfuckers to lie on him and make up shit and nail him with 34 felonies with a bought off foreigner judge. Charges got dropped. You see, everything that they're trying to do to discredit Trump is blowing up in their face. It's backfiring and it's unsuccessful. And this is why they keep cooking up these lies, and they have to keep cooking up these lies, because as one lie starts to lose steam and fail, they got to get the next one going and get people talking about that. As more and more people start to realize and find out that Trump was not doing the nasty shit Epstein was doing, they need to have us talking about something else. So now the next big thing to clog the news cycle is going to be Trump funded January 6th. And believe you me, for the amount of people that were out there, $3 million was not enough. Barnes says, but Citizen Man, tons of folks still believe the lies. Yeah, they believe the lies, but as long as we keep putting out the truth, if they hear us, eventually they'll see something that will take them right back to this truth that we told them. And that'll be their waking up moment. I promise you. But you also got to remember too, not everybody's going to wake up. Not everybody is capable of waking up. And a lot of people are going to die in their slumber. They're going to go to their grave in their slumber. Sorry, I just got a Twitter alert for an interesting article that I want to share on the next show. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says voter data is a state secret. She then is paying to give the data to 2 NGOs. Both NGOs are founded by a liberal operative. This liberal operative paid Jocelyn Benson $12 million on the eve of the 2020 election. Oh, shit. So we got 2020 election news. Yeah, next show is about to be lit. Oh, man. And I hate that all this good shit's coming in the middle of my show right now, and I have to stop and do this because I really don't want to break my train of thought. I was kind of on a roll. But you know what? You hit the Cash App, it'll refresh my memory. Fuck. Trying to screenshot this shit. Why did it go backwards? Hold on a second, y'all. Trying to grab this little this post. Sorry. All right, there we go. All right, so yeah, DC Legendary, very true. He said these constant lies are are the reason why some people are simply too far gone to wake up. That's exactly it, bro. That's exactly it. Because they keep telling the same lies over and over and over again. And people start to believe it, and they parrot it on different platforms. So you watch CNN, you hear the narrative. You flip to MSNBC, you hear the narrative. You flip to Fox, you hear one of their controlled opposition motherfuckers spewing the narrative, and the list goes on. Then you go watch a sitcom or a movie, you see the narrative again. So it's like we're constantly being bombarded with the same lies over and over and over. And so with that strategy, eventually those lies become truth because that's all that's being said, that's all that people are hearing. Now imagine being a child growing up in that environment where everything you hear about Trump in the mainstream media and on social media is negative press. You're literally going to have a dislike for the man for no reason. Because that's what you were told. And this is why the deep state is so big in those college campuses. Because a lot of the younger generation are at those college campuses and they're about to enter the world with degrees in whatever field they're working in. And those degrees, whether they go into the field of their major or not, with that degree, that affords you a more senior position above entry level. So you get some level of control and some semblance of power. Right, Moto Wolf. That's how TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, was created. Lie after lie. That's exactly how they did it. Exactly. And you have to ask yourself, if what these people are being taught to believe is really an actual naturally forming political ideology, then why do they have to lie so much? Well, that's because we're not dealing with the other side with an opposing political ideology. That's not what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with political opposition. What we're dealing with is just straight up ops, enemies. That's what we're dealing with. Because political opposition still has a gentlemanly aspect to it where I'm not going to harm you. I'm not going to wish harm on you or your family. I'm not going to encourage my followers to go hurt you. And I'm definitely not going to censor you. I'm going to have an open, fair debate with you and just put forward better points than you. That's the gentleman's war. Hang on a second. Yeah. So what we're actually dealing with are brainwashed, dumbed down people who have been radicalized through propaganda and lies. And they're under a spell. And they've been victims of the left-wing psyop. And if you're one of those believers that still hang on to the whole Democrats and Republicans are two wings of the same bird, go look up the stats on every major city that's ran by a Democrat, and then go look up the stats on the major cities that are ran by Republicans, and you'll see a stark difference in cost of living, in rates of crime, rates of poverty, hell, rates of homelessness, and all of the bullshit. Hell, rates of police brutality. 90% of the bullshit is all in Democratic cities, and Democratic cities are in much worse shape than in conservative cities. because those people are not governed by a political ideology. Rather, they're governed by a psychological operation. All right, let's get to the next slide. We're on slide 5. What comes after 5? That's right, 6. Well, let's go to 6. This should be the biggest story in the country right now. Jeffrey Epstein hated Trump so much, he was coaching Democrats on how to impeach him. If he had even a shred of evidence to use against him, he would have. Exactly. And this goes back to the golden question. If they have all this dirt on Trump and Epstein, why didn't they release this when they had the White House for the last 4 years? Why didn't they release this? Why didn't they release this stuff under the Mueller investigation? Why did they release this? Because they're liars and they'll withhold information in order to make it suit their narrative. Where is number 7? There we go. House Speaker Mike Johnson, I don't trust Mike Johnson, says releasing the Epstein files without redactions could threaten national security. Now, for most of our lives, when we hear this, oh, it's national security, 90% of the time it was bullshit. And although I don't like Mike Johnson, I don't trust Mike Johnson, and I think he's a slimy little weasel. He looks like a weasel. He has a very weaselly appearance. Like if I went to high school with him, like he would have been the kid that got bullied every day. Not by me, but by the bullies. He would have been the kid I would have been saving from the bullies. But in this particular case pertaining to the Epstein files, releasing them without redactions could in fact threaten national security. Because the people named in the Epstein files as pervs, as perpetrators, they have not all been arrested yet. So in order to investigate them and indict them, they need the Epstein files. And if they don't redact their names from the Epstein files while they're under investigation, well, the release of the files will simply alert those subjects of the investigation to the fact that they're under investigation. And if they know they're under investigation, they won't operate as freely and openly as they do now, which will in turn make them harder to detect. And if you got child trafficking perverts or child raping perverts out there that you're trying to catch using information contained in the Epstein files, and the files are released, well, there's your national security threat. Now you got child rapists running around in your country freely. Again. So it is a threat to national security. Now, the health ranger, Mike Adams, he put forward a pretty interesting theory, so I wanted to share it with you guys. And he says, theory, Trump is throwing his entire support base under the bus because he already knows there won't be any more elections. So their opinions and votes no longer matter. Well, his theory is wrong because Trump's plan is to return the power to the people, and you can't return the power to the people without elections. This is why Trump is working so hard to clean up the election fraud and has been since 2018 when he implemented the use of cybercom. I did a whole stream breaking that down. So if Mike Adams' theory was correct, that Trump knew there wouldn't be any more elections, then there would be no need for him to try to fix the election fraud and stop the election fraud, would there? He wouldn't be calling for voter IDs. And in fact, the elections wouldn't even be on his radar because he already won the election. You see? So to say Trump already knows there's more there won't be any more elections. This is pure conjecture based on absolutely nothing, because when you look at the facts of how Trump has been dealing with elections, it seems like he's trying to create a situation where elections in the future will be free and fair, which means a fair assumption that one could make is that Mike Adams' theory is incorrect, where he believes that Trump knows there won't be any more elections. It doesn't fit what Trump has actually been doing. But anyway, he'll have National Guard troops deployed in every major U.S. city by April 2026. From there, we're just one emergency away from canceling elections and criminalizing independent media and Christian churches that don't comply, just like Zelensky did in Ukraine. Still no elections in Ukraine long after Zelensky's term as president expired more than a year ago. So now Mike Adams is theorizing that Trump will take the tyrannical role that every other deep state president could only dream of. I don't believe it. I think his theory is absolutely wrong. And when governments gain power from emergencies, they always find ways to whip up new emergencies. This time, it will have to be something huge, like World War or a false flag cyber attack on the U.S. power grid. So far, this is a theory. Do you think this is what they have planned? Yes or no? Absolutely fucking not. Because if this theory was correct, you know when Trump had the golden opportunity to deploy National Guard troops everywhere, shut down all the elections, and take over the whole country by force? During COVID. Because during COVID, that was when the politicians, the Democrats, were on a local level, were implementing their power grab to seize total control. So during COVID, Trump being the president at the time, he could have used that emergency to implement a state of total control, and we would have never had the 2020 elections. There would have been no need to. And he would have been also assisting the deep state in keeping the COVID narrative going for a few years in order to get the vaccine mandated. But none of that happened. So this theory is garbage. And Mike Adams is a smart guy, and I respect him. I just strongly disagree with this theory because, again, it doesn't fit the facts of what we actually see. It doesn't fit the facts of what we actually see happening. And like I said, I like Mike Adams. His health stuff is great, and I think he should stick to that. I think he should stay out of the politics and stick to the health stuff. That's my honest opinion. I do not think that Mike Adams has any business dealing in geopolitics because he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about here. So, Mike, I love you, but on this one, you're wrong, brother. You're dead wrong. Dead wrong. Deceased wrong. Now, with the Epstein files, Trump expected to sign bill forcing release of the Justice Department's Epstein files. And this is from NBC News reporting this. You know, the same people who were in line with the other motherfuckers trying to make you believe Trump is in the Epstein files. And why would he want to sign a bill to release the files? And this was from November 19th, 2025. Epstein files. The White House says President Donald Trump will sign legislation to compel the Justice Department to release records related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein as soon as the bill reaches his desk. Congress sent the measure to the White House this morning. That was today. So he probably signed it already. Epstein fallout. Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary of ex-president of Harvard University, announced he will resign from the board of directors at OpenAI amid scrutiny of his connection to Epstein, which is now the subject of an internal investigation at the Ivy League school. Comey case. Lawyers for former FBI Director James Comey were in court today to argue that charges that he lied to Congress should be dismissed on the grounds that his prosecution has been selective and vindictive. During the hearing, the Justice Department admitted that not every member of the grand jury saw the final version of the indictment, an error that could get the case thrown out. Well, if they throw the case out, they could just re-indict him again. So Trump is signing legislation to release the Epstein indictment files. And if he hadn't signed it already, it'll probably be signed by tomorrow. Now, you got to remember, before you start listening to the Trump haters, Trump is not a stupid man. Trump knows the system. He knows the game. He knows who rigged the system, how they rigged the game, and he knows how to play the game with the riggings and still win. Check this out. Ivana Trump died in 2022 after a fall down the stairs, but Donald didn't bury her in a cemetery. He buried her at his golf course in Bedminster, New Jersey. A simple grave, no flowers, no visitors. But behind that decision was strategy, not grief. New Jersey law gives massive tax breaks if land is used as a cemetery. No property income or sales tax. Trump quietly registered the land as a nonprofit cemetery, turning one grave into a tax shield worth millions. Some call it genius. Yeah, that would be me. I'd say that's genius. Others call it cold. That's those emotional motherfuckers that can't think logically. But Trump, he's always played by his own rules. Well, it sounds to me like he's playing by New Jersey rules because it says right here, New Jersey law gives massive tax breaks if land is used as a cemetery. So Trump using the land as a cemetery to take advantage of the tax breaks is not Trump playing by his own rules. It's Trump playing by New Jersey's rules. But people are stupid and their brains can't put two and two together. So they say dumb shit like this. We share powerful insights every day. Well, your insights are not really that powerful. They're actually kind of stupid. Now, the people in the comments were upset and they were like, oh, well, Ivanka should be, I wonder how Ivanka feels about this and blah, blah, blah. I think Ivanka is glad that her father buried her mother on his property. You know why? Because if her mother is the one buried on that property, more than likely that property will be passed down to her. And if her father was wise enough to bury her mother on that property and make that property a tax haven, which is a tax-free property, that means that Donald Trump ensured that his daughter Ivanka, whose mother Ivana is buried on that land, will have that land in her possession forever. And even if she goes completely broke and doesn't have a dime to pay in property taxes, she'll still be able to keep that land because she doesn't have to pay property taxes on it. So from an emotional standpoint, one can say, oh, that's terrible. He should have given her a proper burial in a proper cemetery and blah, blah, blah. And you can do all that emotional, stupid shit. But from a business perspective, from a pragmatic perspective, from a legacy building perspective, which takes logic, it's actually one of the greatest things that Trump could have done for his daughter. Because he ensured that the piece of land that she's going to inherit will forever be hers, and the government will never be able to take it away from her, claiming that she owes them money. Barnes says, reminder, citizen man, Trump can refuse to sign that bill and send it back to Congress and make them vote to release the files completely unredacted. Or he could simply declassify all of it. Yes, he can. Yeah, Barnes, there's a lot of rhinos in the Republican Party, and all this is going on is exposing them. Every vote, every congressional vote they take, it's going to expose them. And I'll say this about Trump burying his baby mama on his land to make it a tax haven for his daughter. I think that is cold. Like, player cold. Like, that's like he's a cold motherfucker for that. Because he defeated the system. And New Jersey actually is not the only state that gives massive tax breaks when you use your land as a cemetery. In other states, according to what Vanilla Ice said, he said in all 50 states this rule applies. So if you bury one of your dead relatives with your last name on your property, you're free from property taxes. Which I think is awesome. And Trump is a fucking absolute genius for doing that. So people can get mad all they want. And if you take a good look at the people who do get mad at that, they're a bunch of bums that don't own shit, never gonna own shit, ain't shit, never gonna be shit, ain't never gonna have shit. So they don't know anything about how to play the game on that level, because they'll never be on that level. Their boss will always be on that level, but they never will. So they'll never be able to see how advantageous that is. Again, another case of American citizens living in America being afforded opportunities that they can't take advantage of because they don't even see the opportunity. They don't even know it's there. So Benjamin Netanyahu says that Israel is still at war with Rome and that America is the Roman Empire. So Benjamin Netanyahu is basically saying Israel is beefing with America. Why? Because Trump pulled the plug. Trump pulled the plug. And part of him pulling the plug is removing, not only cutting off their money from New York City through Mamdani and his bullshit antics, but cutting off their drug supply money by dismantling the cartels. This is why Southcom is running and they're operating and they're fully active. And now we have this big turn up going on in Mexico, which seems very reminiscent of the Obama era when they had the whole Arab Spring. Remember that? When the people of these Middle Eastern nations, or what we believe to be the people of these Middle Eastern nations, turned out to be, gangs and crowds of mercenaries from other countries, mainly Qatar. When they took to the streets and rioted and carried out violent coups and ousted the current serving government, so the deep state could install their puppets. Well, these operations were carried out by CIA operatives called the Jackals. And the Jackals, their job is to go in there, meet with the country's leader, offer them a deal, and if they don't take the deal and capitulate, then they go to phase 2, which is coup d'etat. Either assassinate that world leader or rile up gangs and groups of people, mobs, to carry out a coup, which is an overthrow of the current government. And the Zionist regime do profit from the human trafficking because of the organ trade and the child sex trafficking. The Zionist regime also profits from the drug trafficking. So with the drug manufacturers in South America being isolated by Operation Southcom, essentially cutting off their supply lines, the Mexican drug cartels who would receive these shipments and then smuggle them into the United States, which is the largest market in the world, they're no longer getting a supply of the drugs. Thus, they're not getting that American money anymore. And the cartels are so big, so powerful that their operations cost a lot of money. And if they don't get their shipments, they can't make the money to keep their operations going. So Trump has essentially starved out the cartels. And he starved them out so much that now the organizers of these riots in Mexico are safe to organize because the cartels can't come get them. They don't have the ability to. Shout out to my brother Keith for the Cash App. He says support. So we got 4, y'all. We got 4 on the board. 1 more to make that magic 5. And then 6 more to make that 10 if we could do it. So here's what happened in Mexico. Matter of fact, let me read this to you and then I'll pull the article. So breaking news, the Gen Z revolution in Mexico is now being compared to the American Revolution. Many of the revolutionists are furious that a woman who is not Catholic is running their country, and they are the first Mexican generation to have access to the information they do. They're also the first Mexican generation to have the ability to take to the streets without being under threat from the cartels. The citizens of Mexico are demanding by a full separation from cartel control and are willing to die for it. I guess they are demanding a full separation from cartel control and are willing to die for it. This is the 4th Gen Z revolution this year, following One Piece inspired revolutions in Indonesia, Nepal, and the Philippines. We are officially in the era of rebellion. So here's why I say the Jackals are active in Mexico. Because what I see unfolding in Mexico appears to be a coup d'etat. And I'll show you why. Where is it? So this is NBC News, and this report was from November 3rd, 2025. That was my daughter's 15th birthday. And it says Trump administration is planning new mission in Mexico against cartels, current and former U.S. officials say. The new operation would include U.S. troops on the ground in Mexico striking drug labs and cartel leaders, according to current and former U.S. officials, through a deployment, though a deployment is not imminent. So back on November 3rd, it's now November 19th. Back on November 3rd, Trump was threatening to send military into Mexico. Also around that time, Trump had announced that he was activating the CIA in Venezuela. So the Jackals have been turned loose in Venezuela as well. And remember, the Jackals are loyal to the office. They're not loyal to the agenda. They're not loyal to the president. They're loyal to the orders coming down from the top. So when we had corrupt presidents, the Jackals were ordered to do corrupt shit. And they did it because they follow orders. That's what they're trained to do. Now that we have honest leadership, the Jackals are being used against the deep state. They're being used in a righteous way. They're like a gun. A gun has no opinion, no likes or dislikes. A gun is only a threat to who it's pointed at. And a gun is only as much of a threat as who is holding it. So the Jackals are the gun. And when Obama and Bush and them were holding the gun, it was turned on innocent world leaders that were trying to do the best for their nations and didn't want to be a part of the global enslavement system that the one world government was trying to establish. Now that Trump's got the gun, it's being pointed at corrupt leadership that's owned and controlled by the drug cartels. The Trump administration has begun detailed planning for a new mission to send American troops and intelligence officers into Mexico to target drug cartels, according to 2 U.S. officials and 2 former senior U.S. officials familiar with the effort. You see that? American troops and intelligence officers. And those intelligence officers are Central Intelligence Agency. That would be your Jackals. The early stages of training for the potential mission, which would include ground operations inside Mexico, has already begun. The two current U.S. officials said, but a deployment to Mexico is not imminent. The two U.S. officials and one of the former U.S. officials said. Discussions about the scope of the mission are ongoing and a final decision has not been made, the two current officials said. The U.S. troops, many of whom would be from Joint Special Operations Command, that would be JSOC, would operate under the authority of the U.S. intelligence community, known as Title 50 status. The two current officials said, officers from the CIA also would participate. There it is. There's your Jackals, the CIA. Now we see Jackal-esque activity taking place in Mexico. How do you think that happened? A U.S. mission using American forces to hit drug cartel targets inside Mexico would open a new front in President Donald Trump's military campaign against drug cartels in the Western Hemisphere. So far, the administration has focused on Venezuela and conducting strikes on alleged drug-carrying boats. The mission currently being planned for would be a break with past U.S. administrations, which have quietly deployed CIA, military, and law enforcement teams to Mexico to support local police and army units fighting cartels, but not to take direct action against them. If the mission is given the final green light, right, they weren't allowed to take direct action because the administrations that were sending these American operatives into Mexico, they were profiting and doing business with the cartels, and they were sent there for show. If the mission is given the final green light, and also to oversee the operations. If the mission is given, I mean by operations, that the drug smuggling operations, and also to supply them with weapons. But nevertheless, if the mission is given the final green light, the administration plans to maintain secrecy around it and not publicize actions associated with it. Well, it seems like the mission has been given a green light. As it has with recent bombings of suspected drug smuggling boats, the two current and two former U.S. officials said. The Trump administration is committed to utilizing an all-of-government approach to address the threats cartels pose to American citizens, a senior administration official said in response to this story. The CIA declined to comment. The Pentagon referred questions to the White House. Of course, they declined to comment because they're already there. Under the new mission being planned, U.S. troops in Mexico would mainly use drone strikes to hit drug labs and cartel members and leaders, the two current U.S. officials and two former U.S. officials said. Some of the drones that special forces would use require operators to be on the ground to use them effectively and safely, the official said. In February, the State Department designated 6 Mexican drug cartels, as well as MS-13 and the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, as foreign terrorist organizations, giving U.S. spy agencies and military units sweeping legal authorities to conduct espionage and covert operations targeting the criminal networks. See that? Covert operations. And they were being targeted right here in the U.S. Trump publicly acknowledged earlier this month that he authorized covert CIA action inside Venezuela and has said his administration could strike drug cartel targets on land there. NBC News reported in April that the Trump administration was considering launching drone strikes on drug cartels in Mexico. Trump administration officials are still debating precisely how aggressive to be in Mexico as part of its fight against drug cartels, according to the two former U.S. officials and another former administration official with knowledge of the effort. Well, it seems they've made a decision on how to approach Mexico. And that is CIA covertly creating an insurrection within the country and overthrowing the government. The government ran by the Jew, Claudia Sheinbaum, and her administration is ran by the cartels. That's why she doesn't want Trump to destroy the cartels, because they own her. Either that or she owns them. But either way, they seem to have somewhat of a working relationship. Unlike in Venezuela, the mission being planned for Mexico is not designed to undermine the country's government, the two current and two former U.S. officials said. So in Venezuela, they want to get rid of Maduro, but these Trump officials, these Trump administration officials are saying, well, in Mexico, we don't want to get rid of Sheinbaum. We just want to get rid of the cartels. Well, guess what? The Jackals are getting rid of Sheinbaum. After NBC's story in April, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum addressed it at a news conference. We reject any form of intervention or interference. That's been very clear. Mexico coordinates and collaborates, but does not subordinate itself, she said, according to a translation provided by the Mexican embassy to the U.S. So Trump's saying, we're going to come in and help you take out the cartels, Claudia. And Claudia is like, no, you leave my cartels alone. Huh. The administration would prefer to coordinate with the Mexican government on any new mission against drug cartels, but officials have not ruled out operating without that coordination, and it seems like they are operating without that coordination. The two current and two former U.S. officials said. Since early September, Trump has overseen a military campaign against boats in waters near Venezuela that his administration says were destined to smuggle narcotics into the U.S. The Pentagon has said 64 people, including members of Tren de Aragua from Venezuela, have been killed in 15 strikes on 16 boats. Excuse me. 15 strikes on 16 boats in the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. Officials have not released the names or other details of those killed. The administration has produced no evidence supporting its allegations about the boats, their passengers, the cargo, or the number of people killed, injured, or surviving. Trump has said the strikes are sending a strong message to the cartels that they will face lethal punishment if they try to smuggle narcotics into the U.S. He's called drug trafficking by Mexican, Venezuelan, and other gangs a threat to national security, arguing that law enforcement methods such as seizing narcotics at the U.S. border, at airports, and at sea, and investigating cartel bosses and financing have failed to solve the problem that claims the lives of tens of thousands of Americans every year. There has been both support for and bipartisan criticism of Trump's military campaign against alleged drug smuggling boats. Trump's focus on Venezuela includes not only military strikes on alleged drug boats, but also a pressure campaign against the country's president, Nicolas Maduro. The administration has accused Maduro of being a member of a drug cartel and offering a $50 million reward for information that leads to his arrest. In Mexico, Sheinbaum already has allowed the CIA to expand surveillance flights. You see that? So the CIA is already operating in Mexico, which began during the Biden administration. NBC News has reported. Under her leadership, Mexico has deployed 10,000 troops to the U.S. border, increased fentanyl seizures, and extradited 55 senior cartel figures to the U.S. You see that? 55 senior cartel figures. So the cartels are being weakened. Trump's public comments have suggested the Mexican government is unable to control the cartels. Well, I wouldn't even go so far as to say they're unable to control the cartels. I would say they're unwilling to control the cartels because they're working with the cartels. That would be my assumption. But as you can clearly see in this article, written in plain black and white, the CIA is already in Mexico. And now we're seeing jackal-like activity in Mexico. And I believe that the Jackals are going to overthrow the Mexican government and Scheinbaum, but they're going to use the sheer force of the local people, the mobs, to overthrow Scheinbaum, because they're already at the Capitol rioting, beating up the police and shit. But CBS News reports today, November 19th, warning signs appear on Mexican beach, declaring area restricted by U.S. as Mexico rejects Trump's offer to strike cartel beach in Mexico. And probably landing strip there already. We got ships docked off the coast. You know what I'm saying? You got amphibious vehicles and dinghies bringing the personnel on shore, whoever needs to be deployed to run those operations. And that's how they got the Jackals on the ground. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum on Tuesday ruled out allowing U.S. strikes against cartels on Mexican soil, a day after President Trump said he was willing to do whatever it takes to stop drugs entering the U.S. Meanwhile, Mexican and American diplomats were trying to sort out what may have been an actual U.S. incursion. On Monday, men arrived in a boat at a beach in northeast Mexico and installed some signs signaling land that the U.S. Department of Defense considered restricted. Mexico's Foreign Affairs Ministry said late Monday that the country's Navy had removed the signs, which appeared to be on Mexican territory. The origin of the signs and their placement on national territory were unclear, the ministry said in a statement. On Tuesday, Sheinbaum said the International Boundary and Water Commission, a binational agency that determines the border, hold on. Okay, that determines the border between the two countries was getting involved. The signs driven into the sand near where the Rio Grande empties into the Gulf of Mexico caused a stir when witnesses said men in a boat arrived at a local beach known as Playa Baghdad and erected them. The signs read in English and Spanish, warning restricted area, and went on to explain that it was Department of Defense property and had been declared restricted by the commander. It said there could be no unauthorized access, photography, or drawings of the area. CBS 4 News Rio Grande Valley posted an image of one of the signs on social media. The U.S. Embassy in Mexico shared a comment from the Pentagon Tuesday about the incident, confirming that contractors putting up signs to mark the National Defense Area 3 had placed signs at the mouth of the Rio Grande River. Changes in the water depth and topography altered the perception of the international boundary's location, the statement said. Government of Mexico personnel removed 6 signs based on their perception of the international boundary's location. The Pentagon said the contractors would coordinate with appropriate agencies to avoid confusion in the future. Mexico had contacted its consulate in Brownsville, Texas, and then the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. Eventually, it was determined that the contractors working for some U.S. government entity had placed the signs, Sheinbaum said. But the river changes its course. It breaks loose, and according to the treaty, you have to clearly demarcate the national border, Sheinbaum said during her daily press briefing Tuesday. And there's Sheinbaum right there. She looks scared as shit. The area is close to SpaceX Starbase, which sits adjacent to Boca Chica Beach on the Texas side of the Rio Grande. The facility and launch site for the SpaceX rocket program is under contract with the Department of Defense and NASA, which hopes to send astronauts back to the moon and someday to Mars, which ain't never going to happen. In June, Sheinbaum said the government was looking into contamination from the SpaceX facility after pieces of metal, plastic, and rocket pieces were reportedly found on the Mexican side of the border following the explosion of a rocket during a test. The area also carries the added sensitivity of President Trump's order to rename the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, which Mexico has also rejected. Meanwhile, Sheinbaum on Tuesday again rejected President Trump's offer of military intervention against cartels. It's not going to happen, Sheinbaum said. He has suggested, as in Trump, has suggested it on various occasions, or he has said, we offer you a United States military intervention in Mexico, whatever you need to fight the criminal groups, she said. But I have told him on every occasion that we can collaborate, but they can help us with information they have, but that we operate in our territory, that we do not accept any intervention by a foreign government. Sheinbaum said she had said to President Trump and to U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, on previous occasions. She has said this to President Trump and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on previous occasions, and that they have understood. Would I want strikes in Mexico to stop drugs? Okay with me. Whatever we have to do to stop drugs, President Trump said Monday, adding that he's not happy with Mexico. Yeah, he ain't happy with Mexico. And when America's not happy with you, you know what we do? I'll show you what we do. Well, we're not happy with you, and we want to place your government. There's this special hat trick. It's a very special hat trick that the Americans do, where they send in the CIA and they threaten the country's leaders. And if the country's leaders don't capitulate, they destabilize the country and remove the government. So earlier in November, Trump was in talks with Sheinbaum about military strikes on the drug cartels in Mexico. Sheinbaum declined. Once Sheinbaum declined, that was the negotiation. Once the negotiation fell through, the Jackals were turned loose. And what we're seeing here in Mexico that's happening now, this is the police line right here, and this is the mob. What we're seeing in Mexico right now, I believe it's the work of the Jackals. And you see, people got to understand, these military and intelligence forces, they are not loyal to any agenda or any president. They're loyal to their jobs and their orders. So it doesn't matter who's giving the order or what the order is. They will follow that order to the T. And after decades of destabilizing foreign nations under the directive of the commander-in-chief, they've gotten to be very good at it. And now they just happen to be under the directives of Donald Trump as the commander-in-chief. And their skill set is now being applied to a more righteous cause. Peace out, Motor Wolf. I appreciate you dropping that $5 challenge, brother. I hope some more people take me up on it. My brother Keith, he dropped a 10 on the Cash App. So I guess that's a double the $5 challenge. But anybody else want to take the challenge, feel free. Support the show, man. Support the show. So who else on YouTube is pointing this out to you, that Trump is actually using the Jackals in Mexico? You're not getting this from nobody else. Everybody is too caught up with Trump and what he may or may not have done with his dick. That's where everybody's heads is at right now, behind Trump's zipper. That's what the focus is. The whole Epstein thing, that's what it's all about what Trump did with his dick. That's what we're making a big deal about, what Trump did with his dick. When we know he didn't do anything with kids. but yet everybody's obsessed with it. When that shit don't even matter, because we got a whole country just south of our border where the CIA has been turned loose to overthrow the government, and it's happening as we speak. As we speak. So don't fall for the Trump Epstein psyop. The moral of the show of tonight's show is don't fall for the Trump Epstein psyop. It's a psyop. It's a lie, because if it were true, they would have said it years ago. Don't fall for the pro-Israel talk. Look at what Israel's saying and look at what Trump's doing. And the Jackals, the CIA Jackals, look at what they're doing. Almost every time you see a rebellion in a country where large numbers of people from among the population start rising up against the local government, there's usually CIA involvement. And it's a special group of CIA agents that specialize in overthrowing world leaders, assassinating world leaders, and setting up proxy governments within those countries where they remove those world leaders by force. That's what the Jackals do. So they're not just agents of chaos. They also have some political savvy about them too. And they're able to govern as an interim government, because if they lead the people to overthrow the current corrupt government, those leaders, who essentially would be the Jackals or the Jackals proxies, those people, those guys, those leaders would have the respect of the people and the support of the people. So they would be the perfect figureheads to establish new governance. So the Jackals actually don't just specialize in removing governments, but they also specialize in replacing them as well. So things in Mexico are about to get very interesting, and I don't think Sheinbaum's going to be in office much longer. I think she's going to be out soon. Then she might get arrested, because if Trump's military is over there grabbing cartel members, guess what that means? That means those cartel members could possibly be snitching. They could very possibly be snitching. And if they are snitching and information about Sheinbaum and her administration is being given, then she might be in some trouble herself. And that could be another reason why she doesn't want military boots on the ground in Mexico, because if the U.S. military gets wind of that intel, or gets any credible, solid intel that Sheinbaum is working directly with the cartels, that would put her on the hit list. So instead of risking that, she'll just turn down the help. It's almost like Umar Johnson with the school, right? Umar Johnson has gotten offers from contractors to help renovate the school for free on their own dime. Umar Johnson consistently denies that help. You know why that is? Two reasons. One, he has no interest in completing the school, because once he completes the school, he feels like he can't beg for money no more. So he has to avoid completing the school so he can continuously beg for money. And the contractors who offered their help, well, that would undermine his operation, because if they fix up the school and it's ready to be opened, it's very hard for him to beg for money after that. Not only that, but if Umar has been lying about the condition of the buildings and the contractors come in to work on the buildings, they might leak footage showing that the buildings are in worse shape than what Umar Umar was claiming. So he has to deny that help because that help will essentially undermine his scheme. So you compare that situation to Shine Bomb, where her scheme is to profit from cartel activity. You get an offer from America to bomb the shit out of the cartels. You're going to turn it down because you don't want any outside help coming in, because that outside help that's supposed to be helping you in the agenda you say you want to fulfill, now you show that your agenda is not what you claim it is. It's to protect the cartels and keep the criminal operations going that you profit from. So you're going to deny that help because that help will undermine your operation. That's the game she's playing. And Trump knows this. That's why the Jackals have been turned loose in Mexico. All right. So we are at 2.5 hours. I think I'm going to shut it down here. But before we go, don't forget, don't forget, go subscribe to the Citizen Man Backup channel. If you haven't subscribed to the Backup channel yet, please make sure you do, because the Backup channel is how you stay connected with me on YouTube in case they zap me over here on Citizen Man TV. Also, you can follow me on Rumble. Create a Rumble account. It's fast. It's free. You can hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button, and create your own content. And, of course, with or without a Rumble account, you can still access all of my content. I got over 500 and maybe 30 videos, if not more, of political content on Rumble. That's jam-packed full of information. So if you like the content, you enjoy the show, you want more Citizen Man, you can go binge watch over on Rumble. There's enough content to last you a lifetime. All right, last but not least, guys, we got 4 supporters on the board. Can we get one more to make it 5? If we can get one more to make it 5, I'd be a happy man. But we got 4 supporters on the board. And for the rest of you guys, if you enjoyed the show and you feel so compelled to send in a kind donation, you could do so via Cash App, PayPal, or Venmo by using the tags scrolling across the screen in the banner below. The links that are pinned to the top of the YouTube chat in the black box where it says Citizen Man TV in yellow. Just click the yellow, the box opens up. All the links are there. And you can also find those links in the description box of every video on YouTube and Rumble. That's right, YouTube and Rumble. And so we got our 4 supporters on the board. I would like to get 5. And don't forget the red X through the PayPal logo is just to remind you guys that PayPal censors comments. So if they don't like what you say, they'll freeze your account, they'll freeze my account, and they'll ask us for an accurate count of our ball hairs before they unfreeze our accounts. So before we find ourselves in that position, let's not say anything that PayPal could censor us for and use to steal our money. All right. So big shout out to my sister Elsine on the Venmo. She says, missed a couple of your lives, not getting reminders, but the replays are excellent as ever. Smooth 7. Shout out to my good brother Lee 14224 on the PayPal. He says, have a great Wednesday show. Shout out to my brother Keith for support. And shout out to my good brother Motorwolf for the support on the Cash App with the $5 challenge. Appreciate you, brother. I'm going to go double check the PayPal because sometimes PayPal doesn't notify me either. So I always got to double check. So if you guys could bear with me for a couple of minutes. The fuck is up with this goddamn security check all of a sudden? Motherfucking security check. We have to do a security check. All right. Just completed the security check. Damn, got to go through all this shit. All right. Yep, just Brother Lee on the PayPal. So I guess we're going to be concluding the show with 4 on the board. which is cool because when I did the day stream yesterday, we got 2 on the board, and I said the next time is gonna be 4, and the next time is gonna be 6. So I guess you guys are holding me to it. I guess you guys are holding me to it, man. It's all good. Appreciate that. So anyway, appreciate you guys being here. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you learned something, because if you did, then that's always good. That'll make you want to come back and learn some more. So appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate the love, appreciate the support. And I will see you guys on the next one. Citizen Man, out.